Hello, everybody. This is Hiroya Tsukamoto. I'm here in Venice, Florida, with Joshua Uhl, great guitar luthier, also great guitar player, singer-songwriters.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's nice of you.
So nice to visit his shop.
Yeah.
I'm at his shop now.
Yeah, we're in my shop here in Venice, Florida, small town south of Sarasota, south of Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly a retirement community, and I live here with my wife, my pets, and building guitars.
Yeah.
I build guitars here in a converted garage, like many of us.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask some questions because you have some interesting story.
All right.
And you were born in Okinawa, Japan.
So born.
No, you were born here.
No, okay, this makes it weird. I was born on a Navy base,
Mm-hmm.
Rota Naval Air Station in Spain.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I do not remember any of it.
You were too little.
I was too small. I was too small. But when I was 6 years old, my family and we moved to Okinawa, Japan.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was a civilian teacher attached to the U.S. military on a Department of Defense contract.
Mm-hmm.
He was a PE teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved there when I was in second grade, 6 years old, like at the split. It was over the summer between first and second.
Yeah.
And then I lived there from the age of 6 all the way up until the age of 24.
Mm.
So just under 20 years.
Yeah. So he can speak Japanese too.
I do, a little bit. I
Very
continue
good.
to study.
Yeah. So your concept of acoustic guitar is very unique. He's gonna show.
Yeah, I will. I'll show you guys.
Guitars
Acoustic.
and,
So the acoustic guitar story with me, like I said, grew up in Okinawa, Japan.
Yeah.
Towards the end of high school, so 17, 18 years old, going into young 20s and whatnot. I graduated from high school, but I wanted to stay in Japan. So I picked up a job, a very
You went to like high school in the Navy.
It was high school. It was on Air Force Base in Okinawa. So but it was all mixed. It was Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps. Everybody was there. Very, very diverse.
But no Japanese students there.
Some Japanese students, but that was a special case.
Okay.
It was a special case. But no, it was for the school I went
Mostly
to.
American.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, for American kids
Okay.
whose parents worked with the military somehow, some way. That could be
Yeah.
all the way from like full-blown hardcore military guys, all the way to civilians, secretaries, engineers, technicians, all of that. And my dad was one of them as well. He was a teacher for the school system that they had. And so the reason why there's school systems overseas, and typically here for the United States military, it's in England. We have large bases in England, large bases in Germany, large bases in Japan and Korea as well. On those bases, the military stations military people there for 2, 3, 4, 5 years or so. And they allow them to come with their families. So if they come with their families, they need the infrastructure for families. Daycare, extra hospitals for children and whatnot. And they need schools.
Yeah.
So my dad was a teacher for that. So yeah, we moved there, and that's the reason why I was there. But so we stayed there a long time, and I learned to love Japan, Okinawa, where I lived. I learned to love it, and I stayed. And then when it comes to the acoustic guitars, if I could tell you the whole story.
You started playing first.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did.
In high school.
In junior high. So
okay.
13 years old, 2 things happened to me that helped shape who I am today.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose 3, because puberty hit too. Girls became pretty all of a sudden. So that, which is a hell of a motivator for guitar playing. 2 things I did. I started surfing, and I learned how to swim when I was 13. I started surfing, and I started playing guitar. I had a friend that let me borrow a guitar. And so from that point, the guitar and surfing I actually did love independently. The guitar was somewhat of a tool, to help me with my identity, which most people I think can, when I was in high school, trying to figure out who you are on a surfer.
Yeah, me too.
Guitar player. Yeah, so you do that. So it was a common thing. So my studies into the guitar, I would say I wasn't a respectful student of the guitar. I just really wanted to be cool. But in trying to be cool, I had to learn. I had to play the bass in some bands. I, played with a bunch of other kids that were American kids at that school. But I also really, because I was studying Japanese at the time. That was the other important part. When I was 13, I started studying Japanese. I joined a Japanese band. I would play anything. And so usually we get relegated to a bass player, but it didn't matter. So in my practices, I actually did start picking up chops, but I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't. I wouldn't say I was not a good student yet. And so after high school, and this is when the origin of how I got into making guitars is towards the end of high school, I had always loved fishing. I used to go with my grandfather, my dad's dad, passed away many, many years ago. I started going fishing, and then I walked into a fishing store one day after I kind of started lure fishing, and I saw these, and I'll bring some out to show you. I saw some squid jigs, and some of them were handmade out of wood. And of course, because of the price, and I was broke at 19, 20 years old, I decided I was going to learn how to make one myself, and so I started whittling wood. That's when it started. When it was not wood shop in high school or any of that stuff, which they still had back in the early 90s. I know a lot of places don't now. But I started whittling wood, and I actually whittled a couple of these lures that worked. And I needed wood as a whittler to make these lures, and so I started. I needed material, so I started stealing it from this. I did. I mean, straight up. I was stealing it from the junk pile that was out back of any. I've cleaned mine up because Hiruya was coming, but if we turn the camera later, you'll see I have a wood junk pile. Any wood shop has got it, which is not always junk. Anyway, I got caught stealing wood from this carpenter cabinet maker, right?
Japanese guy.
A Japanese guy, and he came out and he didn't yell at me. He asked me, he's like, what are you doing with this wood? He's like, yeah, well, you can take a little bit, don't take it all. You're still a thief and I caught you. But what are you doing with this? And so I explained to him that I was trying to go about being a fisherman as most economic as I could be because I was broke, I was young. So I showed him the lures I was making. He looked at them and he said, the first thing he said is, show me your knife. And so I pulled out my little, I don't have one here, little Japanese knife, a whittling knife. And he said, show me your technique. And so I showed him how I was carving it, and he immediately yelled at me. He said, well, the way you're carving it is very, very dangerous. So you're going to cut your fingers, which I do. I have scars from going backwards and doing dumb stuff.
So that time you were pretty much self-taught.
Self-taught and doing dangerous things. And so, my mentor, who became my mentor, Matsuda-san, this older Japanese guy, taught me how to use a blade to whittle. And then after that, and then he showed me the blades. He's got a huge shop, so he invites me in his shop, right? Not allowed to touch anything, not allowed to look at anything. And he shows me and he teaches me how to sharpen planer blades. Japanese planer blades, if you guys know, it's a big deal. Finishing by hand. Kannas, And so what he would do is he showed me how to sharpen them, he showed me how to clean whetstones, he showed me how to flatten whetstones. And so for about 6 months or 9 months, that was the trade-off. I would go to his shop, I would practice sharpening his tools, and he'd let me take a few pieces of wood home. And then I'd carve them. So time goes by, about a year or so goes by, and then because I'm still a musician, and I'm like 20, so I think I'm a rock star, I'm like, I'd like to try and make a drum, like a snare drum, because I had a drum set, a dilapidated one that I had used. So he showed me how to make a barrel style, like a whiskey barrel style taiko. Not really a taiko, it turned into a snare.
Small.
Small, like a piccolo snare. So I made about 3 or 4 of those, bought the hardware from the local Japanese music store, put them together, they worked out good. So I had done that, I was learning how to carve other things, I started carving different things, had a drum, thought I was cool, bought a router, he taught me how to use a router and how not to kill myself, made my first dovetail when I was like 21, 22 years old, and it was just a simple 1 in, 1 out. Then eventually when I was 23 years old, so it was like 1998, 1999, I asked Matsuda-san, my mentor at the time, sensei, my Mr. Miyagi, so to speak.
The way he teaches this.
The way he taught. I had my own personal Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid. It was wild. I mean, it really was. And it's happening in Okinawa, which is even better. I asked him about, I know how to do drums now. And of course, I'm young, so I think I'm a pro at drums. I'm ready to graduate to
So you are kind of confident.
Oh, of course. I was young. I was dumb as hell.
I can do anything.
I can do anything, right? Which I think nature builds us that way. And because I look at things very differently now that I'm 47 as of today. But I asked him, I said, I'd like to learn how to make a guitar. An acoustic guitar. I wasn't even shooting for electric. I was shooting for, I was going for broke. It was acoustic. And so what my mentor, Matsuda-san, did at the time is he goes upstairs, he comes back down, and he opens up this case, and it's this beautiful classical nylon guitar sitting there.
He built it.
And he built it. And so I'm like, wow, damn, this is like 4 years we've been hanging out. You've been holding out on me the whole time. I mean, this is an older. Seriously, it's like Mr. Miyagi. It was the exact same thing.
Wow.
And so I drew the conclusion like an idiot. I was like, so you know how to do it. Cool, you can teach me. And it closes the case. He says, no. He's like, you have to go to school for this. You know, he's like, I've taught you safety of the shop. And by this point in time, after a few years, I had a full run of the shop. He taught me how to use the joiner, the planer, the big saws. He taught me how to tune. And it was all about safety. And so I would never really cut anything in the shop except for building a drum. No. It was more like learn how to use this tool safely, you know. And he showed me, he said, if you want to keep playing guitar, you need to do safety. So he was a stickler for that. So he told me no. He said, no, I'm not going to teach you how to build guitars. And of course I was pissed off because I'm young. I'm like, why would you do that? And then he told me, he's like, you need to go to school. He's like,
for guitar building.
For guitar building. He's like, go to school for guitar building. And he's like, and you should go back to the United States. That's your country. And I had never lived there. You know, I would go back on summer vacations like a lot of us would go, you know, grandma and grandpa and all that stuff. But he's like, no, you need to go to your country, do it. And he told me, he said, if you go and go learn this stuff and see if you want to do this with your life, he's like, you can always come back. And if you successfully go and graduate from a school, a vocational school in the United States, whenever you come back, you can have any wood you want from my supply. And he had a lot of ebony, lots. He'd been collecting it for probably 20 years. So I'd get free ebony all the time. And it's still to this day, to do that. So what I did at that point in time is, as I left Okinawa for the first time when I was 24 years old, and I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, to Roberto Ben's school.
Yeah, that's a really good school.
Yeah, still running hard. It's at a new location. I visited them a few years ago. I went to the old location in South Phoenix.
Oh, okay.
The dangerous.
Oh, really?
The deadly. Yeah, we had junkyard dogs that we let go every night. We learned the hard way. A lot of techniques, I still use them today. John Reuter, if you ever see this, thank you. All of them. Willie Meaton, everybody was there that taught me. I still have my notebook from school. So I went and did that, and I learned, and it was fun. We only had to build 2 instruments, but I built 3. I built 2 electrics because I had the time. Electrics are pretty easy, you know. Love Electrics is its own beast, but I'm an acoustic player, so I wanted to do that, so I built 1. After that, while I was at school, I had a little bit of homesickness, so I decided to move to Hawaii because it's a little more similar. Lots of Asians in Hawaii. I felt very comfortable there. You know, mixed kids, just like I went to school with. So I go to Hawaii, and I actually got a job for a short period of time at Keli'i Ukulele in Pearl City, and I was there. At the time, I had a Japanese wife at the time. I married her, and she needed to go back to Japan, and those two, they kind of coincided at that point in my life that I was like, as I was sitting in the ukulele factory every day working, which I loved it, and I realized that I loved it, but I got worried. I was like, am I going to be able to do this and pay rent, buy a house, do these, do I have it in me? Because people have proven that they do. There are guitar builders out there that have succeeded to this day that do a really, really good job. I had a crisis of confidence. I didn't know, can I do that, can I not? And that's when I had to ask myself, because now I know how to build guitars. I'm not that good, but I know how to do it. And I know how to build ukuleles. I was young, you know, I had 25 years old at the time. And then I decided, I made a decision to take guitar building and not stop doing it, not stop the study of it, but to put it as a very, very serious hobby and passion. Okay. Yeah. You know, all right, so how am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to pay the bills at that time? Well, like I said before, I grew up in the military. I was very familiar. I was very comfortable in the military. And my boss that was actually at the ukulele factory was in the Air Force. Before he became, and he's still working this day. And you know, I thought about it, and so we had to get, you know, my wife had to go back to, my Japanese wife at the time, she had to go back, send her back to Japan, and then I went down and I joined the Air Force. So joined the Air Force. It's a long story, but so joined the Air Force, and while I was in the Air Force, I continued. Anytime I could get the chance, I would build. Yeah, and so electric guitar would take like 2-3 years, or there'd be times, you know, you've got deployments, you get stationed. I was stationed in Japan for a while, living in the barracks, you know, in a dormitory. So I didn't get the chance, but I would always either whittle a lure that I would never use, or I would prepare some wood, or, you know, I'm the guy that when I would move places in the military, the movers would come and get my stuff, and there'd be all this wood, and I'd be carrying it around the whole time. They'd make fun of me, and so I did. And I had some good camphor wood and some ebony. Yeah. So I continued to slowly do it. As I progressed through the military over the years and made rank and had a bigger place to live and had a garage, and then I started, you know, building up my tools. Then before I retired from the military, I retired in 2014, probably about 2009 or 10 or so, I had actually completed like 2 acoustic guitars during my military time, which I was really proud of.
Yeah.
They were terrible, but yeah, terrible, but they worked. My dad still has one to this day. Then the end of my military career came a little sooner than normal because of the wars that we had going on in both Iraq and Afghanistan, which turned into a blessing for me because my plan was to do an entire career in the military anyway. When I was at that ukulele factory, I was like, I can do 20 years. And then after that, I can have a supplemental income, a retirement income, and then be able to build and make all the mistakes that any luthier would make anyway. You know, we're all going to do it. It's either, are you paying for it right now? You know, it's like, because it can be painful. Building guitars can be painful. And we all progress at different speeds. And I was a slow burner, I mean, granted, I was still in the military, but I was a slow burner. But when I got out of the military in 2014, 2015, really, then my wife and I, we decided to move to California. California first, yeah. And Southern California, in Ventura is where I went. And really it was because there's a lot of guitar builders in California. And I was just hedging my bets. I was betting that I could meet somebody. If I had to pay him, I'd pay him, but you know, just to be a mentor. And so I did. I found a mentor in Ventura, California, Randy Parsons of Parsons Guitars. He's also, he did short time in the military, but our personalities connected quite well. And he was a tough mentor. Yeah. But after dealing with this Okinawan guy, I was like, I realized that I actually preferred to be yelled at and made fun of. Like, you never can do it right. I was like, I've been conditioned, and I'm like, that's cool. And I'd been in the military, so I was used to being yelled at. And I was used to yelling at people. You know? So it's just like, okay, this is how we do it. We're aggressive and abrasive. Yeah. So at that point, I had a bunch of people that I had promised gifts of electric guitars. So I made a bunch of electric guitars to get my hands going, to get into it. And then I built, as a request, I built an acoustic bass. I'd never built one before. And so I did it, you know, as I was taught at Roberto Venn via John Reuter, was basically I did it a Martin X brace, stiffened it up a bit, and, you know, blew it out, you know, kind of jumbo size acoustic guitar is what it was. And I just put a bass neck on it, you know, I carved out a long bass neck, and my buddy still uses it. But when I had built that, I had kind of lost my way a little bit because I had built like, you know, 20 or so electrics, and I was getting good at electrics. And of course my mentor Randy at the time, he saw this bass I built. He's like, and he told me, he said, what the hell are you doing, man? You're an acoustic builder. Wasn't that your first love? And I'm like, oh, that's right, it was. But after the transition of retiring from the military, I lost my way a little bit. So what I did at that point is I just turned on the heat and I built a few acoustic guitars. Then it happened. I was over at Randy's place, and Randy showed me what we call unofficially the Kasha guitar, which is an asymmetrical braced guitar, sometimes a sound hole on top, sometimes a sound hole on the side. And it sparked a memory from Roberto Venn. When we were in Roberto Venn, we had to study the different varieties and the history of guitar top bracing. And so for the steel string acoustic, you know, the X brace pretty much pushed out by C.F. Martin. Martin did it. German, you know, steel came into Industrial Revolution. Now we got steel. So they came up with first the X brace, then the forward shifted X brace. And so I knew that. But in the study of historical bracing patterns mostly from Europe, they showed us the classical bracing patterns, which are all over the place. I mean, they're very unique to the builder. And I'm like, what's going on here? Now, we had always been taught that the X brace is necessary for the string pull, you know, 150, 200 pounds, whatever, of just torque pull. On that top, you absolutely had to have an X brace, and for a classical, you didn't need it. And I was like,
it's nylon.
It's nylon. So I sat there for the longest time, and I'm like, oh man, is that true? Is it true? You sure I can't do a different one? And of course, you have to try, right? I still had enough youth in me, and I'm like, I can do it, right? Of course, I fell flat on my face. So I take, you know, I just modify, you know, Kasha, Richard Schneider, and Michael Kasha are the two that came up with it. Schneider was a Luthier, Kasha was the...
Are they Americans?
Yes, both are. Both are.
Okay.
Well, I'll have to double check on Michael Kasha, but Michael Kasha was actually a professor here. I think it's a University of or Florida State University.
Oh, okay.
He was a scientist of sorts, and there's you can research it online, like the legend behind how Kasha, not a guitar player.
But he's the one who invented.
He was the one that, he used his engineering prowess to create a better way to balance out the tone. Stuff that was like way over my head. You know, where the X brace gives us the strength, but there's a lot of attenuation that can occur. So can that be improved? Is what, you know, Dr. Kasha, he was a PhD, Dr. Kasha thought, and I believe the story was because his son started taking guitar lessons, and then he heard it and he was like, that's inefficient. You know, he's like a scientist or something, right? So what he did is he sought out a luthier to try to make it, and Richard Snyder, which I have some of his tools from that have been passed down, and of course they're sacred to me and I never use them now. I've also got a half of a mold from them. But he found Richard Snyder is well renowned from Washington State, the West Coast, but Washington State's where he was. Well renowned luthier from I believe the 70s and 80s, probably even the 60s, and both of course passed now, but. They designed, and I have the original prints, they designed an asymmetrical bracing pattern for a steel string guitar, and they pitched it to Gibson. So don't mark me on these dates right here, but they did it twice. I think it was once in the late 70s, early 80s, and then once again in the 90s. I have the paperwork, it's a jumble of stuff. I have copies, like old like scan copies, you know, Xerox. I have Xerox copies of it. They pitched it to Gibson. For whatever reason, it didn't fly. Gibson modified it a little bit, and it didn't go because it's weird looking. It's weird. The guitar body shape is fine. But
inside.
Inside's quite different. And one of the things that Dr. Kasha and Richard Snyder, and then there's also one other person I think corrected it. It was the idea of putting the sound hole in the middle, which weakens the top of an acoustic guitar quite a bit. You know, you got the strings pulling, and then all of a sudden you've got this giant hole. But that's the hole where the sound comes out. A lot of the sound comes out, especially the bass. So what do you do here? Do you move it down to the treble side? Do you move it to the bass side? And so the sound hole started moving. And then the sound hole disappeared at one time and went on the side. Nothing ever came of that at that particular time until about the 90s. And then Dr. Kasha, I don't know if he was still around. Don't mark me on this story right here because it's been a while since I've had to recite it. But Richard Snyder had passed away. Richard Snyder's best friend, Uncle George Machowski, I believe is his name, had all of Dr. Kasha and Richard Snyder's plans for Kasha. And this is the early 90s. And it just so happened at that time there was a very young luthier, Randy Parsons, who became my mentor, who was hired to take photos. So in the big red book of Luthier and whatnot, if you look at the photos from when George Machowski and the introduction of a new character, Boaz, in Kalman, he's from Israel, they decided to take the plans and try to pitch it, build 10 of those and try to pitch it to Gibson once again. And so they built 10 asymmetrical Kasha and Schneider guitars. And then the 11th one, I believe, Boaz from Israel said, who was also a very good luthier, said, I'm going to take the sound hole and I'm going to move it from the top of the guitar and I'm going to put it on the side. We'll show you guys what we mean. And you know, it's kind of like, it looks like it's in a point where it would be a monitor, but it's not. It's actually in a point because the bracing is in the way. You have to get that hole out of the way. When Boaz did that and put the hole on the side, Randy was like, that's the magic trick right there. But it looks weird, but that's the magic trick. Then it went dead silent. Gibson said no. I think they built a few. I've seen a couple of them. One I had at my house, I repaired it. A gentleman in Ventura had one. And it had a sound hole in the middle, and it was asymmetrically braced. And I wish I had a top that had bracing, but we'll just talk about it. I can show you what it looks like. It didn't sound that good. But Randy said, no, the one that Boaz made did sound good. So I copied it. And I looked at Randy's stuff, and I had my old notes with the original, you know, Kasha design, which basically looks like how you would have the bass end of a piano, and it narrows and tapers down. You know, you've got your low E string. You know, if we were looking at it from y'all's point of view, low E string here, high E string here. The bracing would actually shoot out and become smaller as it goes, and I'll draw it for you guys. So it actually did kind of a piano shape, right? No sound hole, so you could shoot one brace for stability. So I built one, and I got paranoid. It didn't work, and the reason why it didn't work, and I did sound hole on the side, and I did a little vent hole on the top, and I should pull it out. I have it. I'll show you. And so what the bridge started doing is the bridge started tilting. You know, it started tilting. You know, so I over reset the neck, and I screwed it up. You know, I was like, what's going on? Okay, I'm not. Well, this is why an X brace works, even with a hole in it, is because it's very, very strong, right? But the asymmetrical won't. So I was like, I wasn't ready to give up, so I started building up the bridge plate, shooting, you know, different braces, stiffening up the center brace that would go up, you know, that's right in line with the pull of the strings. And it started working. But the one thing I did notice is about, you know, the third or fourth one in is they started sounding really good. And I'm like, oh man, what's going on here? And then when I say good, it's not necessarily a different sound, it's a very full, rich sound. And I'm using Sitka spruce for all the tops. I'm keeping it pretty, using, you know, walnut, bubinga, standard woods. Standard woods, even some of them not used as common in mass production, but woods, not uncommon. Not uncommon. I'd use those, so everything else was staying pretty true. You know, we're doing a scale length are the same, nothing fancy on that. Keeping it 25.5, 25, you know, keeping it in the Martin range, sometimes a little bit bigger, 655 millimeters would be the longest I would ever go.
So you can kind of compare.
Yeah, right, and I did it like a compare, I wouldn't want to go off and make something too weird, because I wanted like, okay, the normal person that plays a normal, you know, triple OM, and I never went as big on the dreadnought with the Kashas just because I was still studying it, and the bigger the top, the softer it is, the more you got to brace. So I'm like, let's make it smaller, right? That was my plan. So by the third one, it started sounding good, it started sounding rich, it started sounding full, it started sounding really like, you know, like, I wouldn't say pre-war because I'm not that pretentious, but a well-worn-in Martin from the 60s or 70s, you know, a nice Indian rosewood one, a full, rich bass, you know, it feels like it's like compressed. There was a sweetness that started coming out. And it happened to coincide with me, you know, studying vocals, how to sing, and my neighbor in California, really, I mean, he taught me how to sing, and he gave me the opportunity too. And I noticed is, you know, having the sound hole on the side, which I'll show you guys right now, so you guys are completely confused, but hopefully this will fit in. But so from the player side,
this is beautiful.
The right-hand guitar. You see the sound hole's right here. So when you play it, I actually put the sound hole right here for a while, but I moved it up because it sounds better to go that way. Otherwise, if it's right here, it's like putting a speaker right in front of you.
Too direct, you mean?
It's too direct. So it's shifted to the side, and I stole the shifting it to the side to go that way from a, I don't know the guy's name here. I'll keep it like that. I don't know the guy's name, but it was a nylon flamenco player from Argentina. I was watching his YouTube, and he was talking to this younger guy who was a luthier, and he like yelled at him. He told him, for surround sound, you want to move it. So I was just like, okay. I'm like, okay. I mean, I didn't, I'm trying to figure out what way to do what. So I went ahead and moved it, and it really started helping me hear the guitar, because that is something that we don't quite notice is with you know, sounds come from all directions on the guitar. You know, high frequencies will come straight off. You don't even need a sound hole. You can hear high frequencies. You know, think of a ukulele or something like that. High frequencies will come off. But your bass and your mix start coming from the combination of all of the holes in the top working together. So yeah, I just, I don't know, I lost my train of thought, but So I moved it, shifted it, I loved it. It helped me hear myself, whereas I would go back to a standard X-brace with a center sound hole and whatnot. And sure, I could still hear myself, but it sounded different. It wasn't coming closer to directly in me. So it really started helping with my singing, so that gave me more motivation to be like, okay, how can I make this, you know, really work? And so this guitar, let me see what year it is. Did I put a year on here? I didn't, but this is probably 2019, 2020, so this is 3 years old, and this guy's fine. It's not tilting at all. You know, might have to reset, you know, we've got a little bit of, you know, depth right here, but yeah, this is a Kasha, and that's an unofficial term because that's, you know, Michael Kasha's last name, but it sounds a hell of a lot cooler than asymmetrical bracing on the inside. But yeah, so the braces on the inside, I wish I had one that was in production right now. So under the bridge, just like you'd have in the X-brace, typically an X-brace would run this way and this way, clipping the wings of your bridge right here. Well, this one basically has braces kind of fanning out in these directions, becoming increasingly smaller as they get here. And then there's a giant bent brace that blocks it. So it kind of, when you look at it, it's reminiscent of like a grand piano. How a grand piano is really fat and it gets small. That's what the bracing looks like in there. And then I stiffen it up and ran one up here to get it going. And there is, you know, I'm not super scientific, you know, with machines or, I mean, I was a meteorologist, so I do understand science, but this was a passion, so I'd rather make 100 Kashas, get lucky, go back and copy what I did, you know, because it's a passion for me to do it. So I did that, and I'm really probably about, 2023, so first Kasha was 2017, 2018, so I'm very fresh, very fresh into it. I'm about 20 deep. And there's a couple other guys out there that I do see on YouTube. YouTube or just random websites where they will do it. I don't know if they're doing X braces and just a side sound hole, which still works. You can still do an X brace, you know. And of course, with no sound hole right here, it's even stronger. It's even stronger, so it works. So you can lighten up your X brace a little bit because of this. But they will put like a monitor style hole right here, and those sound good too. You know? I mean, it really is in the hands of the luthier. You can do either one, but. You know, I got stuck on this.
And you like this size?
And let's talk about size.
Yeah, double O, triple O, a little smaller than triple O.
Smaller, yeah. Let's talk about size. And this one might get me in trouble to talk about, though, but I was always a dreadnought guy. Just big, booming, cowboy, let's go, right? And I love dreadnought. And when I went to school back in 2000 at Roberto Van, I built a dreadnought. And I loved it. And my buddy in Japan has it. Actually, this is going to him as well. This guitar is going to Japan as an order. But when I started doing the Kasha, the one thing that happened to me was I'd never built small guitars. That's for pansies. Yeah, a little guitar, a little finger picker, yeah, nerds. You know, everybody's a nerd, right? No, absolutely not true at all. A lot of them are badasses. And then we got one right here. But what I did is, in an effort to figure out what was going on with a bracing system that was questionable at the time, I mean, the first one, you know, bent and failed, was, okay, if I make the guitar smaller, then I can build up from there. So what I discovered, and I didn't shoot for like O size or anything. I took a
very small one.
Right, I took a dreadnought standard dreadnought usually runs at its lower bout, so from here to here, lower bout from here to here. Dreadnought's usually about 16 inches across. Which, we got two problems. One is that's huge, and it gets more expensive buying wood when you do that too. So what I did is I just kind of, my neighbor who taught me how to sing brought over a 1933 Epiphone Zenith, little jazz box. It was a jazz box. And so what we did is that's where it started, the first one. We traced it. And I was like, oh, cool, this is like 13 and a half inches. This is super narrow. Oh, this will make life easier for me so I had built my friend two of, you know, those size 13 and a half, 14, you know, inch lower bouts. And I did standard X brace on his, but I just took the mold, and I'll show you. I took the mold, which is like this, and I cut this on the player side for a right-hander, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna jam this in here and do Kasha. So I used the exact same one, slightly modified over time, and we did a little wasting. It's not a dead copy. I've never been good enough to copy anything, really, even in my playing, but I made it, and from that point, I started enjoying the smaller size, and then I realized with a well-built guitar, a smaller size one, you can strum it, and you can do things. It's really in the build. And so I don't, you know, if you've got a good hand, and I hate to say good luthier because I think anybody who builds guitars is awesome. I have great respect for anybody regardless of whether it's, you know, just an electric in the, you know, in the workshop or in the kitchen, which I've done before. So anybody that builds guitars, I, you know, applaud them for doing that. But you get a good acoustic luthier, he can make a small guitar sound really, really big, and the Kasha kind of lent itself, that asymmetrical bracing pattern kind of lent itself to that. And so, and you know, I think psychologically too, over the course of years, you know, finger pickers like smaller guitars.
That's true.
Generally speaking, okay, that makes sense. You know, and then strummers like the big ones, but you know, understanding the reason why in the beginning, I mean, it was difficult for me. I was like, you know, can they do, he had, because smaller guitars.
That was the original design for the guitars, right?
Yeah.
Basically, until like 1930s.
Yeah, 1930s.
All the guitars were pretty small.
Yeah, pretty small.
Yeah.
Then they had to compete with a band.
Yeah.
That's where the resonator came. All those loud ones. Yeah, making them all out of brass or copper. Hell yeah, no. Those are cool. Oh, those are really, really cool. You had to get that volume. And then, I think it was just a matter of, I'm sure they could have figured it out faster, but it was like, there's not, the United States economy wasn't, hinging on the engineering of the guitar. It was an entertainment piece. It was used for music. And so, I went small, and I'll still go big. The biggest I go is 15, but what I've noticed with the Kasha, if I do a 15-inch lower bout, which is kind of like a mini jumbo, it booms. It is really ripping. I'd have to stiffen it up to shut it up. So, and also kind of a psychological thing too, because I'm not that tall of a guy. I'm 5'8.5", 5'9", and with the little one, I can hold it like a rifle. I'm like, and it just made me feel, I don't know, more control. And of course,
this is your regular size, basically. This typical model.
This is my typical model, and the shape is derivative of the 1930s Epiphone that my buddy had, so we traced it. I've made a couple other designs, like
beautiful.
I've got a more classical shape design, but it's still 14.25 inches at the lower bout. It's just a little rounder at the bottom, a little more, the figure is a little more feminine. And I like that too. So typically these two, and every now and then I did get a request from one of my friends who said he would pay full price and then tip me if I made him a big one. Because I made a big one for my brother, 15-inch lower bout. And everybody loved it. This is up in Minnesota. And so he said, I want one that sounds like my brother's. And so I told him that I will build him one, but let me build like 4 or 5 and you get the best one.
Nice.
Because remember, we're still in experimental stage, which I would have no problem being in experimental stage for the rest of my life. Really.
Yeah, always learning.
Right, yeah.
Same as me, no?
Always learning.
It's endless.
It's endless, right? And that's the joy of it. And that, goes all the way back all the way back to when I was, standing in a ukulele factory cranking out, finishing 12 to 15 ukes a day. And I thought to myself, wow, I really can do this. I could do this for a long, long time. And it was very beneficial as well, because my time in the military was spent, I joined the military in May of 2001. Everybody knows what happened 3 months later, 4 months later, right?
That's right.
Yeah, oh shit, right? Yeah, September comes rolling around. Yeah, June, July, August, 3.5 months later. I'm like, oh crap, we're going to war. So hey, I signed up, so we went to war. And little did I realize the transition from, being a wartime military man and then retiring out, and a lot of my buddies, we still keep in contact and we're kind of a support group for each other, was you have to have a hobby. I'm like, my hobby was planned out. I was ready to do it. So the experimentation and discovery of the acoustic guitar. And steel string, steel string is going to be my main focus, because I want to be a master of one. But I do love the nylon guitar, and what I will do is I'm going to build myself one kind of hybrid. I'll build a classical, and I'll make it so that the transition's not too difficult. I'll put a little radius, a real soft.
Narrow neck or?
A little narrow. Yeah, I will. I'll take the neck, and rather than 2 inches, maybe take 1.8, 1.9. Yeah, bring it in a little bit, just kind of tailor it. So that I don't, so that the transition from steel to nylon is a little softer, because I do love the sound of nylon.
Yeah.
And Kasha originally was designed to be in a nylon, so I think I got to pay my respects to that. You never know what the future brings, though. If it turns out, if you come back a year from now and I'm building this nylon, then we'll know what happened. But it was a pretty interesting. That was the journey. That was the journey I took, and so.
Could you play some sounds?
Yeah, no, we can. I don't know. I don't know.
It's a big sound.
Yeah, it is pretty big. It's just open. But there is a note separation that's different from there's a note separation different than the dreadnought. got it from the player side. Yeah, this is like blasting me and vibrating right up against me. So it's I thought about it like I'm not really into marketing, it's not my deal because it's all kind of research and, discovery. It's all R&D for me. But if I had to define it, I would put it as a very personal songwriting studio guitar, which a lot of guitar makers, the first ones they make are very delicate. And that's what it rolls into. I will continue to study and get bigger, and then maybe one day be able to figure out where to put a pickup in it. Because
that's right.
Yeah, you could. So one of the other big problems we have.
No space.
You're right. There's no space to slide one here, right? So just a straight transducer.
Yeah.
And my buddy did it before. It's like the biggest problem is most of the time you could just throw like a Fishman. Yeah, a piezo under saddle. The only problem is directly under the saddle is a saddle brace.
Okay.
That's 3/8 1/4 inch, probably 3/8 inch tall underneath this. So if you're gonna punch through, you're gonna punch all the way through a brace. And I had somebody from California call me because as they were doing that, they're like, "Dude, what's going on, man? I can't get through. It won't pop up because usually there's just a bridge plate and it's easy. You just drill right through.
Yeah.
But this one's got a brace running through it. I'm like, well, I was like, take it at an angle to allow that ribbon to come up soft. But I was like, just keep pushing it and you will push through. So I haven't brought myself to do that with any of mine, but that's also a playing preference. I play at the dinner table. I play by myself in my studio. I play in here, or with a couple of friends. I don't go out and perform much. I build X braces for that. I built an X brace to be able to take out. And I've got one of those. I'm making a single O for myself right now.
Yeah.
With a spruce top, which will be just for that, for performance guitar. So still in development.
So this is the perfect guitar, when you play at home and sitting.
It is, yeah. It's intimate.
Intimate.
Yeah, it's an intimate guitar, and I've done shows with Kashas like this, asymmetricals like this, with microphones. We'd get like 3 microphones. We'd sit there where we're all singing in the same microphone. I've done that, but that you're not getting the clarity of the individual guitar. We've got 2 guitars and a banjo kind of thing going on. So it didn't really matter too much. But for clarity like this, I've recorded with this into. And here's a shout out at Birch Studio in Ventura, California. I recorded with all of my Kashas into 2 separate microphone, like expensive ones. It was like a ribbon mic, and then microphone guys knows that. Yeah. I had like 2 or 3 set up in front of me, so it would pick up everything. And the recordings came out very, very nice. So studio, they work. They work really, really well with no plug-in. So we did discover that, and I used all of the Kashas that I had on me at the time. There was about 4 of them. I took them all in, used them all. Some worked for some songs better than the others and whatnot. But yeah, studio-wise, you can get a great recording. And the studios loved it too. They told me, they're like, that sounds like an old Martin you've got going on right there. And they know it was it was a 2000 brand new that I had just made. So it expedites that. And just like any independent guitar maker, we can make guitars very thin. We can make them sound really, really fast. Now, they won't live as long, usually. But it can be done. Yeah, any independent luthier out there, man, Godspeed to you, brother. I absolutely love all of you. I love checking you guys out. And a couple of guys doing this. But this is the path I chose to take because of luck, circumstance.
Great stories.
Yeah, that's a long story. Sorry about that, guys.
Very interesting background and the things you went through.
To get and I think everybody, if you. Yeah, I agree. I agree that I have an interesting story, but I think which you're an excellent storyteller, I think if you do things in life, maybe this is the philosophical part we're getting to, I think everybody's story can be told well.
That's true.
I think it can because, remember Mom told us that we're all special. Individually. I agree now. I'm like, oh crap, we are. All as humans, there are a lot of us, so. This is how I got to where I was, and I cherish and appreciate it. The older I get, the more I appreciate it. Like, oh my goodness, what a wild ride! I laugh at how stupid I was when I was young, but
and the unique thing about you is you study with the Japanese working guy.
Right.
And you studied here.
Yeah.
Which is not many people did it, you know?
Yeah.
So you have some Japanese detail kind of thing.
Right.
Into it, but also like American.
Yeah, there's a sensibility. So
Western.
Let's see
thing, right?
if we had to. Okay, well, let's check this guy out right here. Okay, this guy. Let's go ahead and spin her all the way around. This, taste-wise, is the result of having mentors and elders that were both Japanese and then American. And I can call them right off my hand. It was. And I may have said it too much, but John Reuter, who still is running Roberto Van, and William Eaton, those two inspired me, and then of course the final mentor, Randy Parsons. So that's the American influence.
Yeah.
And then prior to that, so yeah, you'll see like very, very little inlays, big fat side dots, so you see where you're going, but like no inlays, a little bit of laser work just to identify what it is. Nice clear little pick guard. Which, look at this picker. We've been playing this a lot. I need to hurry up and deliver this. This was finished before the pandemic. Japan was closed off for 2 years. Yeah, I mean, you didn't even get to go to Japan. Yeah,
right.
But yeah, this is a combination of those two influences.
Beautiful.
Yeah, over the years.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, thanks for asking me about it. I appreciate. I appreciate the questions because. See, now I'm looking for mistakes, right? Because I've had it for too long. I'm like, well, we got to change the strings. We know that. I was like, is everything?
Goes to Japan soon.
This goes to Japan soon, and I'm sure he'll love it. And so this one is Sitka spruce. I love Sitka. This one's got a little bit of bear claw. Yeah, bear claw from Alaska. I've used other spruces, and I'm going to be honest with you. In the right hands, all of the spruces are good. I'm biased because. I love bear claw, and I just love the dirtiest top you can find, and it's from Alaska, and Alaska Tonewoods is the name of the place. Just Google them; they're right
Alaska
there.
Tonewoods.
Yeah, Alaska Tonewoods, and when I call them up, they pick up the phone. They're up in the country, Prince of Wales Island in southeast Alaska. Oh, wow. They'll talk to you on the phone. I get to talk to them.
Really?
You know, see how life is. You know, the orcas, the whales, the salmon, everything. Right? Yeah, I just talk to them like. I love that human connection. And so I just order from them. I order from them when I don't even need it. Yeah, they got a sale going, okay, well, let's just order more spruce. So I got tons of spruce. Cool. And I just happened on Alaska. Maybe that's just me being a military guy, being proud of being American or something like that. But the other stuff is good. They've got it in Japan. I've used German spruce. I've used, Carpathian Mountains spruce. Never used Italian. Never had Italian, but I think in the right hands they're all good. They all do have different characteristics, though. They're different. The Alaska spruce is very rubbery. It's rubbery but strong, and so that's typically what I use. Then the back and sides are bubinga, and so I put this wedge. You know why I put this wedge here is because the bubinga wasn't wide enough. That's a trick I learned from Roberto Van. So you just throw a decorative strip in there, and it didn't really impact the sound. It didn't. Yeah, sometimes it kind of will. Yeah. And there's a Martin. It's a Martin Dreadnought that does throw the wedge.
D35.
It's a D35. I have a D35 copy from Westone, Japan, and that was the first time I had seen this years ago, 20-some odd years ago, and I thought it was super cool. So whenever I don't have wood that's wide enough, I have no problem doing a 3-piece or a 4-piece back. If you can do all the same piece of wood and make it look nice, that's ideal. But sometimes you got to throw some stuff in, and it's striking too. You throw this out. They're gonna love it. So I was like, I throw it that way. It sounded really, really good. Action's super nice.
Great.
But that's the arc of the asymmetrical steel string acoustic guitar. My journey up until this point. So
thank you for sharing.
Thanks for asking everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nice.